In the dense, uneven terrain of eastern Ukraine, where thick forests stretch for kilometers and visibility can shift from clear to obstructed in a matter of seconds, the front line often transforms into a maze of uncertainty. Every trail, ravine, and fallen tree line becomes a potential point of contact. Soldiers operating in this environment understand that the decisions they make, sometimes in the span of a breath, can dictate the outcome of an entire operation. For months, this region had been shaped not by large mechanized assaults, but by continuous small engagements, reconnaissance movements, and quiet attempts by both sides to gain a foothold in terrain where sound travels unpredictably and sightlines change with every step. It was in this challenging and unpredictable setting that an Azov reconnaissance element identified subtle but persistent signs of activity. Their network of observation posts, drones, and forward patrols had detected an uptick in Russian infantry maneuvers, movements too deliberate to be random and too consistent to be routine patrols. These were small advances, usually involving 6 to 10 soldiers at a time, shifting through the forest in patterns that suggested a probing maneuver rather than an outright assault. To the Azov troops, who had spent months studying enemy behavior and reading subtle changes in activity along the forested flank, this pattern was immediately recognizable. The Russian side was testing for gaps, searching for weak points, and attempting to bypass fortified positions by moving through areas perceived as less guarded. Over several days, the reconnaissance team refined their understanding of the enemy's movement. Drone footage confirmed Russian soldiers entering narrow forest paths, moving cautiously between clusters of trees, and deliberately avoiding open ground. These routes offered concealment, but also created natural choke points, pinched corridors where movement slowed and visibility dropped to only a few meters. For an experienced unit familiar with terrain nuances, this created an opportunity. If an interception were to take place, it would have to be in an area with maximum strategic advantage and minimal risk of escalation into a major engagement. The Azov element formed a small mobile group consisting of marksmen, forward observers, communication specialists, and light assault troops. Their mission objectives were precise: maintain control of the forested corridor, gather intelligence on enemy intentions, and halt any advancing detachment before it could establish a deeper presence in Ukrainian-held territory. They were not preparing to initiate a major firefight, nor were they seeking to escalate tensions. Their approach was measured, methodical, and based entirely on tactical necessity. By late afternoon on the day the contact occurred, the environment played directly into their advantage. A thin fog began forming between the trees, softening distant shapes and muffling sound. Visibility varied unpredictably, clear one moment, hazy the next, making movement riskier for anyone unfamiliar with the layout. The Azov team moved silently through the forest floor, their steps carefully placed on patches of moss and soil to avoid snapping twigs or disturbing dry leaves. They positioned themselves along a ridgeline overlooking a known movement route, an area where fallen trunks and thick undergrowth forced anyone passing through to move slowly and in single or staggered file. The team spread out, maintaining spacing but staying close enough to communicate through discreet hand signals and low-volume radio transmissions. Each soldier checked their field of fire, adjusting angles to ensure the killing zone, if it came to that, was clearly covered. The ridge offered a perfect vantage point, elevated just enough to provide visibility over key terrain without exposing silhouettes against the skyline. For nearly an hour, the forest seemed frozen in a quiet tension. Aside from the natural rustling of leaves, distant bird calls, and the occasional groan of shifting branches, no unusual sounds broke the silence. But seasoned soldiers know that silence in a combat zone is almost never a sign of safety. It often signals the moment before movement. Eventually, subtle movement emerged through the lower tree line. Through shifting fog and scattered branches, a forward Russian element appeared. 3 soldiers moving cautiously, rifles raised, eyes scanning their periphery. They paused frequently, listening, reading the forest the same way their Ukrainian counterparts had been doing. Moments later, additional troops materialized in a staggered formation, positioned several meters apart to reduce vulnerability. Their movements confirmed the Ukrainian assessment. This was not a patrol wandering without purpose. This was a calculated reconnaissance in force. As the Russian soldiers navigated the corridor, their pace slowed due to the density of the terrain. Fallen logs forced them to step carefully. Thick brush brushed against their gear, and the narrowness of the space prevented them from spreading out widely. The Azov team observed in silence, counting soldiers, identifying equipment, and monitoring their direction of travel. The final count showed between 9 and 12 Russian troops, enough to present a threat, but not so many that the Ukrainian force would be overwhelmed. When the Russian group reached the corridor's center, they halted. Their leaders exchanged gestures and quiet words, likely discussing upcoming checkpoints or adjusting movement routes. Some took out maps or tablets, confirming coordinates. This was the pivotal moment. Allowing them to move deeper risked compromising several Ukrainian staging points positioned further inside the forest. Waiting any longer would mean losing tactical superiority, yet acting too soon could alert other enemy elements or waste the team's advantage. After a brief and silent calculation among the Azov leaders, the order was given. The marksmen steadied their rifles, adjusted breathing, and aligned their sights for a synchronized opening strike. Their objective was not to neutralize the entire enemy team. It was to disrupt, confuse, and halt forward momentum. In forest warfare, creating uncertainty can often deliver the same results as overwhelming force. The first two shots were precise and almost simultaneous. They struck the leading Russian soldiers, instantly breaking the cohesion of the group. Confusion rippled through the formation as the remaining troops instinctively dropped to the ground and scrambled for available cover. Some hid behind thick tree trunks, others behind exposed roots and collapsed branches. The fog made it difficult for them to pinpoint the location of the shooters. Their communication became fragmented as they attempted to regain control of the situation. The Azov unit capitalized on this confusion. They shifted positions slightly to avoid counterfire, moving along the ridge with practiced fluidity. Rather than engage in a prolonged shootout, they used measured, well-timed bursts to keep the Russian unit suppressed. Every shot served a purpose, shaping movement, limiting visibility, and preventing the enemy from regaining confidence. The Russian troops, realizing the unfavorable conditions, attempted to assess their limited options. They could push forward into terrain they could not see clearly, remain pinned down in the corridor, or attempt a retreat that would expose them to potential fire. Some called for a fallback, while others argued for flanking maneuvers. However, the geography made flanking difficult. Steep slopes, tangled roots, and thick brush blocked rapid movement. Any soldier attempting to maneuver out of the corridor would be exposed for several seconds, more than enough time for a well-positioned marksman. As the minutes passed, the tension intensified. The forest echoed with controlled bursts of rifle fire, ricochets snapping off bark, and the heavy breathing of soldiers adjusting positions under pressure. The Russian group became increasingly disorganized, struggling to regain coordination. Their radio chatter was intermittent, with conflicting instructions and unclear situational awareness. The Ukrainian troops, on the other hand, maintained calm precision. They communicated in low whispers, adjusted firing angles, and ensured no one broke discipline. Their goal was containment, not reckless aggression. They understood that pushing deeper after the Russian group could lead them into improvised traps, hidden mines, or additional enemy units waiting further down the corridor. Eventually, the Russian troops made the decision to withdraw. Several soldiers moved cautiously, dragging their wounded toward a more sheltered area. They chose retreat over continued attempts to advance, a sensible decision in the face of a sudden and well-organized ambush. The Ukrainian element observed their retreat without attempting to pursue. Their mission was to protect the corridor and prevent infiltration, not to push into unknown territory where advantage could shift unpredictably. Once the area fell silent, the Azov troops held their positions for several minutes. Forest engagements are often followed by counteractions, and the team needed to ensure the Russians were not circling back or preparing a secondary push. After confirming no further movement, they regrouped and relocated to a more secure observation post deeper inside Ukrainian lines. From this new vantage point, they prepared a detailed after-action report. They described the size of the enemy unit, their equipment, their direction of approach, and the timing of the engagement. This information was transmitted to higher command and used to update frontline maps, reinforce monitoring points, and adjust surveillance drone routes. Drone footage later confirmed that the Russian detachment did not return to the area that evening or in the following days. Their withdrawal marked a temporary stabilization of this forest sector, but also signaled that more attempts could follow. Such engagements, small in scale but strategically significant, shaped the momentum of the broader conflict. They influenced troop movements, resource allocation, and command decisions far from the immediate area. In the aftermath, Ukrainian forces strengthened patrol rotations and installed additional monitoring equipment. The Azov element reviewed their own performance, analyzing communication efficiency, reaction time, and positioning choices. These sessions are routine but vital. In an environment where every engagement can play out differently due to terrain, weather, and enemy behavior, self-evaluation is essential for survival and success. As evening descended, the forest shifted once again into an eerie calm. The long shadows between the trees created a sense of stillness that contrasted with the tension earlier in the day. The soldiers knew, however, that such calm is temporary. In forest warfare, the line between silence and conflict is thin. The next encounter might come in hours or days, but it would come. Ultimately, the operation demonstrated the importance of tactical patience, terrain mastery, and the ability to make immediate decisions under pressure. These small but decisive engagements contribute to the rhythm of the war, reminding both sides that control is not gained solely through large-scale offensives, but through continuous, disciplined vigilance, in places where visibility is limited and danger is hidden behind every tree. Follow the channel. For more analysis, frontline updates, and detailed military narratives, follow and support the channel. Delta History.